We'll go ahead and get started. Again, this is our third pilot training, and today we're getting into the meat of the matter, which related to our project that we're all focused on. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So today's training and tomorrow's training is Module 3, focused on providing family-centered peer recovery services, understanding and work with families impacted by substance use. So this is the module where we're going to get to what the newest model that we're trying to create in this initiative is about. And the audience for this module is, unlike the first two modules, is very focused on the family-centered peer recovery coaches workforce. So the supervisors and the family-centered peer recovery coaches, perhaps all your peer recovery coaches, but specifically family-centered. So that's what we're about today. You've got the same folks today as you had the last two, Sarah and myself, Karen. So very briefly, just introduce myself if you weren't on our previous two modules. I am with Social Current, one of the partner agencies in this initiative. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, so a social worker by training, and am one of the leads in creating this curriculum for this initiative. And Sarah, we can get to you as soon as you join us. Here's just some housekeeping for today, pretty much the same as our last two modules. We know 3 hours is a long time to be online, so please get up and stretch as needed. If you're not in the camera lens and you're stretching or walking around your room, we totally understand that and encourage that. If you can, and it works for you, please leave your cameras on as possible. We find that the engagement is easier to see, to connect with when people have their cameras on. I hope you received the key learning summary for today's training. I sent it just before, like 20 minutes ago. Sorry, I couldn't get it to you earlier. Again, that handout, you don't need to print it. You can just look at it online, but it mostly duplicates everything in this presentation. And there's a place for you to take notes as well if you do download it. Our point in sharing that is so that you don't need the slides, but you see the flow of the training as we go through it in this key learning summary. And are there any questions that you may have had from the last training? Anything new that's come up for you? Well, Sarah and I really appreciate the ongoing conversation, so please do not hesitate to unmute yourself or put something in the chat as it arises for you. So here are our learning objectives for today. We will be describing the impact of substance use on the family system, focusing on the role and responsibilities of a family-centered peer recovery coach, looking into exploring how family-centered peer services support the needs of children, youth, and families affected by substance use, and talking about how we apply various skills and strategies in this work when engaging families in recovery. I will say that this is the first time we've done this training live. This is the module that got the most feedback from our review process, which makes sense. We got tons of very relevant and important context and feedback in the review process. Also, it was the one that our work group teams really had to wrestle with, because it's the work of this initiative to create or strengthen this model. And so we don't know it all yet. So we really do need your impact, your evaluations, your feedback in the evaluation form that comes at the end of today and the end of tomorrow. And also any way you can help us contribute via chat, even unmuting, about what's missing, what we need to add, etc. I will say one more thing, that this collection of content is pretty long, because as it should be, and because it's the meat of the matter, as I said, we may find that come somewhere tomorrow that our plans to do this in 2-3 hour segments is not valid, and we may have to add another maybe 2-hour pilot section. We'll know more about that tomorrow. We do want to hear from you. Is it too rushed? Is it too long? Those kinds of things. We know when you do this with your organizations live and in person, you can revise it, adapt it any way that you need to. And we do think you probably will be doing these mostly in person. But for the sake of our virtual space today and tomorrow, we do want to make it as relevant and as effective as possible. So we welcome all of your comments, and we're just going to be adapting as we go if things need to be addressed. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah now.
Great. So I get to do our regulate and relate activity today. I have a couple of things that we're going to do this morning that require maybe a piece of paper and a pencil, just or pencil, whatever, for you to jot something down. So if you want to take a minute here, I'll just give people a minute to grab a few pieces of paper. Maybe hopefully that's nearby. If not, I'll just take a second or two for you to go grab a couple of things to jot down some notes on. Okay, so our regulation activity today is a grounding activity, which many of you may have done things like this before, may have heard about things like this before. Grounding is a really great thing to do with families when you start a meeting with them. It doesn't have to be as lengthy as the one that I'm doing, but it's anything that in some ways quiets our mind, but also puts us in time and space. So it makes us aware of where we are. A lot of times when we are stressed, when we are hustling, when we just got into the office, there's 1,000 things going on in our minds that we might be worried about, might be thinking about. And so I'm going to ask for us to just take a deep breath and then look around your space and find 5 things that you can see. What are things that you can see? And as you look at them, I want you to take a second to look at that thing and then write it down. I feel like that also helps to ground us. So if you can see your computer, I can see a painting on the wall, those kinds of things. Write down 5 things that you can see in your space right now.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks for sharing those emotions. Some of those match mine as well. Our shared, now can you see this? Am I sharing appropriately, Sarah? The shared agreements?
Yes.
Okay, so here are shared agreements. We've done these before. They're also in your key learning summary. Really important. One thing we've heard in the evaluations from a few folks is this information can be intense. So just want to make sure you're acknowledging that and you're prepared for that. So, some of the things I point out here again are take care of yourself in any way you need to. Things may come up that surprise you, emotions you weren't expecting. So if that happens, please let Sarah and myself know either in the chat, and you can chat us individually, and perhaps text a friend. Feel free to take a break any way that you need to. It's harder in the virtual space for us to pay attention to that, but please don't hesitate to reach out. There's been a lot of really nice engagement, and I haven't experienced anyone in our last 4 trainings to violate any of these. So you guys are just really on track with all these shared agreements that, we listen, understand, non-judgmental, all of that. We really, really appreciate how people have held the space for each other and how you've engaged. So our agenda for today, for these 2 days, is, we're doing Welcome Now. We're going to talk about the impact of substance use on the family and talk about the various different family members that are impacted and how that shows up. Also, talk about, then move into family-centered peer recovery coach's role and responsibilities, competencies. And tomorrow we'll really take the deep dive into working with families and those skills and strategies that are necessary for a family-centered peer recovery coach to work on, to continue to strengthen, to bring to their work. So we want to start here with the impact of substance use on the family, and I'm going to turn it back to Sarah for this section. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the ripple effect and kind of the reason for thinking about the family when we think about substance use disorder, not just thinking about an individual. So, have you ever thrown a rock into the water and watched the ripples expand out? The ripple effect refers to how a single action or event can cause a series of consequences that spread outward, much like the ripples on the surface of the water when a stone is thrown in. So today we're just going to ask you to think about those ripples and positive, negative, all the ways in which events can impact. So for you to consider these different domains, the way in which financial stability, emotional well-being, physical health, mental health, safety, trust, relationship, and social connections impact the individual who's experiencing substance use disorder. And then in the next circle out, impact their household, their partner, their children, their parents, or others living in the household, or immediate context. Then we can talk about the way in which that might impact extended family, friends, their employers, their coworkers, and then finally out to community members and or service providers or others that a person may come into contact with. And what we know, if we think about, or if we have been trained in thinking about the way that systems operate, is again, a ripple in one of those places impacts all of the parts of the circle. You can go. So one of the things I wanted to do to start out as we start to think about looking at families and family systems and how they interact is something that is a tool that social workers have used forever, something called a genogram. And I want to, in case any of you haven't done these, this is an activity, and again, we'll try really hard today to really give you some hands-on tools and to have this training be hands-on tools that people could use when interacting with the family. So that's one of the reasons I asked for paper. And so the genograms are all in the key learning summaries, Karen says, to making sure that you do that. What I'd love for you to do is think about a family that you know well. So it can be a family that you serve, that you work with. It can be your own family if that's not something that's super activating for you.
Mhm.
Sometimes doing our own family can bring up some things. It could be a family on TV, right, that you know well. It doesn't matter. This is just for the exercise purposes. And what I want you to do is draw out 3 generations of relationships. A couple of things to know. A circle here means female. A square here means male. You can use another symbol, perhaps a triangle for someone who's non-binary, um, and and really map out those generations. There is, so I should add that to my key here. There's a cross link that means those people are partnered, and then this T is that those are the children of that partnership. Now, again, we understand that families can get complicated, right, with step parents and remarriages and things like that. So this is really a basic one of 3 generations. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to fill that out. I have here that this person in blue is the identified participant, and all of the relationships in this chart are in relationship to this person. Alternatively, you could choose to put names. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just map out a family that's in your mind using just getting the players down. Okay, let's move on to step 2. And again, these don't have to be perfect. And these aren't used as like diagnostic tools. It's just something to really explore, a tool to explore with a family, how they see their family. So step 2 gets a little bit more complicated, and it's talking more about relationships. So the double lines there represents a cutoff, or a divorce, or somebody that you know people don't see anymore, what we call a relationship cutoff. I have it looks like a little bit like a lightning bolt, or it can be like a jagged line if you're drawing it to indicate violence or abuse. A dotted line can represent some conflict. A straight line can represent neutral or a positive relationship, and then a double line are people who are really close. We also have a couple of other indicators here for I did striped lines for SUD, for substance use disorder within a family. Mental health challenges within a family are more dotted lines. And again, these are the things that I chose. There are some, if you look up online, there's a whole host of kind of codes for a genogram when people are using them in a therapeutic sense. We don't need you to get that complicated, but just really looking for where we're going with this is looking for patterns, looking for things that repeat throughout generations, um, and not from our diagnostic perspective, but from a family, be able to look at that and go, wow, it makes sense that I'm stressed because this has been going on for generations, things like that. So, and then the little square there with the X is people who have passed. And I also like to put cause of death there too. And again, sometimes that can be a little tough. So let's give you about 5 minutes to think about that within the family that you have chosen to map out. Details about relationships and challenges. Up on with my timings, but we'll move on to the third step. And the third step is not one that I've seen a ton done in genograms, but we decided it was really important to add. And this is really about strengths, mapping strengths and assets. Um, so this is really what I have here. For example, if we can see down here by participant, I have a double line to the a best friend since childhood. Um, and they also have a recovery support person. Their son is really close with their chemistry teacher and their football coach. Daughter has a best friend, and the best friend's mother is really supportive to her. She's also in dance club. Husband connects with the church pastor. So just really for the immediate family, thinking about um, strengths, assets, relationships, even people that they might, because where you're going with this too is also thinking about people that they might consider like family or assets to them in this recovery journey. And so we want to get that mapped out. We also want to be able to assess for people who don't have anybody, who's somebody in this dynamic who might feel alone and isolated, and how part of our work might be to get that person connected to someone, to get them involved in other things so they feel like they have that, what Bruce Perry calls relational wealth. Um, Sorry, my dog is choking underneath the table here. If you heard that. So thinking about that. So mapping out some strengths, some relationships, and assessing for who doesn't feel like they have anybody. Where in this system are there strengths? Where are there gaps? So I'll give you a few minutes for that, and then we'll talk more. Okay. So I would love for people to either put in the chat or come off of mute and talk a little bit about their experience here. What patterns did they see? What strengths or challenges or gaps did they see? How might this be useful in working with a family to sort of help them identify and be self-reflective about their strengths? So Crystal, go ahead. You want to come off mute?
Hi, how y'all doing?
Great.
For me, I did my family, the three generations, because it's actually my family was blessed to have six. Two is deceased, but four of us are still standing. So I did myself, my daughter, and my granddaughter, and we all have had in common violence, through whether it was a lot of it was physical, like a lot of mental abuse due to me being, in addiction for so many years towards my daughter, and it was my mother towards me. And then my daughter, she's kind of not violent with my daughter, but the way she speaks to her sometimes. But then we also are very close knit, and then all three of us have in common, which I think is a great strength for us. We all are strong. We're all motivated. We both are self motivated, and we all three of us are very determined.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So that's something that you passed down as well. And Crystal, your audio is a little bit scratchy. I don't know. I love to hear you share, but I don't know if there's anything that you can do
Okay.
around that. But just to let you know. Yeah, so looking at strengths, but also noticing patterns, becoming aware of patterns that there might be um, violence or abusive or emotionally abusive sort of relationships happening. How might we talk about that with a family? How might we talk about awareness? How might we talk about, in the case of this substance use disorder, thinking about how that impacts use and coping strategies and all of those things. So thank you for sharing. That's I'm very powerful. Who else? And again, you could map out 6 generations, Crystal, too, or whatever, however many generations you want to do. It's just for this exercise, you just need bigger paper. Go ahead, Jenna.
Yeah, so I'm noticing that um all of the women in my family, well, not all of them, but well, all the women on my mom's side of the family and down the generations, we've all experienced some type of domestic abuse, but we all are also very strong women and are very resilient.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Thank you for
mhm.
sharing that. Yeah. So thinking about that, where does that resilience come from? Again, thinking about how you might use this with a family to think about, okay, so where does that resilience come from? How do we pass that down? How do we pass that down to the next generation without passing down the suffering and the challenge, like that kind of thing? It's just a way to open up that kind of conversation. Thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable. So I can definitely see Melissa says, I can definitely see the relationship with addiction in my mother, my father, myself. But today, my nuclear family, my mother, all have supportive relationships. My father has passed. My kids are healthy. Very positive stuff. Yeah. I love seeing that my kids have a cleaner slate than the slates before them. So yeah,
Mm.
that's also great to see the healing that can happen through generations. Ooh, that almost made me choke up there. About how we might have way more assets down here at the bottom than we do at the top, and being really intentional about that. So does everybody feel like this is a tool they could use and draw out, or that peer family centered peer recovery coaches could use to just open up discussion about family and about family patterns? Yeah. Go ahead, Kyle.
I think with a lot of it, especially in our native communities, when we talk about patterns, this is going to be easy in regards to helping us map out our genograms because there's a lot of similarities through culture, through behaviors, through habits, specifically with the diagnosis or even like substance use. So, but I get, why we're doing this. It's an easy activity, but it just makes us realize, that, resilience, there's a way to bounce back. And that's what this curriculum is specific to. So, but I really like this. And it's easier for us because as Native people, we're very visionary.
Yeah.
We can see things differently. And we're very creative too. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would love it to see, to again think about the ways in which culture, language, ritual, routines, not routines, cultural traditions, things like that have created strength throughout the generation. Thank you. Um, Whitney has my family. Oops, I scrolled up. And children's fathers both struggle with substance use and mental health. However, as a person in recovery, I see the supportive relationships among everyone. Jerry says the last one I made me think we should draw our family trees the other way around so we can envision growing out and away from generational curses. Thank you, Jerry. That just gave me the chills. Yeah, that's awesome. So again, thinking about how we might use this, and again, not as a diagnostic tool, not as anything, but really making sure we are acknowledging challenges and patterns, but not in because sometimes I think historically geograms have been used in a way that feels a little hopeless. Okay, well, this has been going on for 6 generations. This is really, I love the idea of adding strengths, challenges, resilience factors, so that we can have a complete picture and help a family to find a way forward and to understand their experience, understand their story, and also move towards healing. So, any other thoughts or comments on that, or Karen?
Thank you, Sarah, and everyone that commented and did this. I wanted to just reflect that when we were looking into adding the genogram to this training, there, it's often been used as a clinical practice in a therapeutic setting with a therapist that's, again, working with an individual around their history, trauma history, recovery history, et cetera. And we were really encouraged to include the genogram from some of our partners in this community who said, no, we use the genogram and it's very helpful for the family to be able to see themselves. So as Sarah noted, it's not clinical, it's not diagnostic in nature, and as you have shared, it just can be so helpful as a visual, as Kyle noted, for the family to be able to gain more understanding about interactions, strengths, history, etc. Just wanted to share that.
Great. Okay. So, moving on, and again, you can create some more if there's more codes or things that you need to add to it. That's great too. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about viewing the family in the context of substance use disorder, defining families. There's a lot of different ways we can define families. We can define our families as our biological family or our chosen family. We can define our family as our nuclear family, sort of the family that lives in our house, or has lived in our, or extended family. Many people think multi-generationally, live multi-generationally, consider their extended family to be part of their family, and others are estranged from them. Traditional versus diverse structures, all kinds of different families can exist. Legal connections, or sort of by marriage or by birth connections versus an emotional connection. There could be people, again, in that genogram, there was that person that had the best friend since they were kids. Maybe they feel like that person's more family than their actual family, right? And then from a cultural perspective, different cultures view families different ways. So again, unmute if you want to. Can you click, Karen? What qualities, or you can put in the chat, or experiences make someone feel like family to you, even if they aren't related by blood? What do you think? Again, you can put in the chat or you can say it out loud. What makes somebody feel like family to you? What qualifies that? Consistently showing up, listening ear, loyalty, trust, love, and care, supports you through good times and bad, love, loyalty, love, trust, and support. They show that they care. They're honest, being there, honesty, acceptance, supportive, and they don't leave when it gets hard. Shared experiences. Yeah, they're with you through thick and thin. So I hope that you Again, have people in your life like that. You can click, trust, unconditional caring. Yeah, beautiful. So that leaves us to the question of who do we engage in services? If there's people that are not related to us by blood that we could define as family, that are our supports, who gets to define what a family is in a family-centered approach? And how does that influence who we serve? And again, continue talking in the chat or unmute. Um, how do you define family in family-centered peer recovery coaching? What do you think? Family is defined by the participant. Yeah. I don't think that I decided, they do. Yeah, definitely. So having that genogram activity or some other activity to help people to identify who is their family, who do they think are the people that could impact them on this journey, who are the support people, who are the people that need support also, and thinking about how that might change the way that we might serve people in this new way of thinking about this, that we aren't that the client that the sorry that the family isn't defined by the old way of thinking about client, and then this is birth family, that kind of thing. So having participants be the people that are the ones that engage that and influence that and talk about the people that are important to them. We want to talk about in terms of that ripple effect, how SUD impacts partners. We know there's a lot of ways that if you are partnered with someone who's experiencing substance use disorder, it can be impact us emotionally, our relationships, financial, daily life, having consistency, having uncertainty in the future, our own parenting, whether or not that person can engage in parenting, co-parenting, both our social and community exposure, so the way in which we show up in the community, and then also physical health. And physical health for the impact on partners can be around what we talked about in the trauma-informed care module, the way in which stress can impact the body, and the way that for many of us, our stress and anxiety shows up in health concerns, and that's the way it manifests. Also, you can click. Looking at extended families, grandfamilies, parents. So really thinking about, again, that extended family, the way that conflicting feelings about their own child who might be struggling with SUD, they might have love, anger, guilt, shame, loss, all of those things. They might be older and unable to attend meetings and be the support that we might want them to be, unable to meet needs for financial support that a family might be asking for, and so they have guilt, shame around that, or frustration, or even difficulty setting boundaries. They might recreate unhealthy patterns that have happened in terms of the parent-child interaction. So they want to be supportive, but ends up in whatever, some kind of pattern just replaying itself out in terms of shame or guilt or those kinds of things. They're unprepared perhaps to care for children in that family, and they might have conflicts with their adult child or with the adult child's spouse, those kinds of things. So, or partner, really thinking again about those ripple effects. And then impact on extended family. We know that extended family can have a lot of worry, they can have a lot of judgment, a lot of advice maybe that's not helpful, or strained family dynamics. They grieve or the loss, what they feel is the loss of the relationship they once had. They might minimize, something. Sometimes, families extended families from outside can do things like, well, just don't worry about that, or just drink less, just do less, that kind of thing. And so they might minimize that. They might be strengths too. They might come together in a crisis. They might become advocates for recovery, for support services. They might help a person, a family, to engage in services, to navigate systems. They might rise up and seek to learn more about addiction, substance use disorder, and mental health. So just again, thinking about that ripple effect and the way the impact can show up. And all of these are just really making the case for why we engage the family. Substance use disorder does not just happen in a vacuum. Anything to add from that from others? Okay. Let's keep going. I'm gonna just talk about a few ways in which family members might adapt when there's substance use disorder going on in a family. So in traditional ways, there has been um, sometimes we talk about some classic kind of survival roles or ways that family members might show up around that. And some of those we've heard about, like caretaker, family hero, scapegoat, mascot. Perhaps you've heard about those, lost child. But I really wanted to shift that language because some of that language can be a little bit labeling or pigeonholing in some ways, because I think people can have adaptations to substance use disorder in their family that is very diverse, right? And so it can look like some parts of those traditional roles, and other parts. So I'm really choosing to have these next few slides be ways in which people might adapt, because all of the things, whether the way in which a family member shows up, whether we consider it to be positive, compassionate, negative, all of those things are all adaptations, are all people trying to adjust, to adapt, and to survive something that's happening within their family. So ways in which a family could adapt. They might prioritize compassion and stability. So somebody that takes care of the emotions of others, is always trying to create stability among chaos, really prioritizing the need of others over themselves, and they might have difficulty setting boundaries. So this is one way that people can adapt in a family, and might be prioritizing the needs of others and sacrificing the needs of themselves.
And Sarah, I would say that all of these components, these next slides and this one have, depending on the individual and the family, positive or negative impacts. So that it can go, there's no judgment about exactly how, if this is negative or positive, but can be,
Yeah.
unlike the traditional language, it's much less pejorative. It's much less labeling to talk about it this way. Thank you.
Yeah, and to even go over these, I mean, not that you be in a family's living room using a slideshow, but to become familiar with these and talking to families about how have you been coping, how have you been adapting, and to normalize that all of these things are just ways that we adapt. It's ways that we try to negotiate something that's difficult and challenging, and some of them are very protective. And so to have people self-identify, what are the ways that you've been coping? How have you been surviving this, or managing, negotiating this? So go ahead. Next slide. Some people might prioritize responsibility and achievement. So they might really try to excel, be perfectionistic. I think sometimes that can come from childhood, sort of this magical thinking that if I do everything right, everything's going to be okay. Right. And so, of course, we know that builds a lot of anxiety sometimes, but it can lead to really high performance and really people excelling. And as some of you have talked about, maybe not trying to repeat um, stressors of past generations, but always being mindful of the pressure and where that, or that anxiety or the perfectionism and where that might be coming from. These might be people that keep the family secrets or keep secrets among the family. They suppress their own emotions, kind of everything's fine. They might take on adult-like responsibilities, might try to step up in that way, and they internalize pressure to maintain the family image. So really stuff that's going on at home, trying to make sure that that doesn't show up out in the world. Family members also might adapt by prioritizing humor. I think this is one of my strategies, using humor to diffuse tension, deflect or defy emotion, entertain or perform, or use more sarcasm or kind of gallows humor, dark humor. in a way to adapt. And maybe again, some of you might be seeing yourself in some of these slides as well. Go ahead. Family members may also adapt by withdrawing, right? By prioritizing their own safety, avoiding, disconnecting, using the freeze response, going silent, numbing, checking out, or just observing. And other adaptations we might see, becoming an advocate, right? Helping the family to confront the issues without blame. So really being the person who says the thing, talks about the elephant in the room, being an advocate for healing. We could be somebody who names feelings out loud, reduces the stress, builds the family's emotional IQ, making a space for everyone's feelings, shares their insights, and is able to think about that, again, emotional intelligence, and really seeing the dynamics. And that's again from a it's a role that a family-centered peer recovery coach could do, is to help people to get to this place. What are ways that we want to adapt in a healthy way, that contribute to the healing of a family? Create personal goals, support networks, invites families to participate in those, uses problem-solving skills to support recoveries, not to hide the family's pain, but to really solve problems, balancing their alone time with purposeful engagement. So again, doing what I need to do to take care of myself, protect myself, also, but not checking out completely from the family. Modeling healthy boundaries, open communication, self-care, celebrate progress instead of perfection, and encourages shared responsibility rather than rescuing. Beautiful. I'm not sure what's happening, if we can
I
get
don't
rid of
know.
this.
That's interesting.
Um,
I don't know if I can. Anyway, we'll do this first.
okay.
Then we'll do.
Yeah, let's do this question.
I think we can go into groups for this, Sarah. We
Oh,
haven't
okay, sure.
group yet.
That sounds great. Then we
That's
can-
okay, Cody? Groups of 6, I think.
100%.
So
Groups of
take
six.
we'll put these in the chat too. But just discuss for how many minutes?
About 8 minutes,
Okay.
something.
Okay.
I'll put them in the chat, and I think that might carry with you. I don't know. Well,
Roughly how many people do we want in each room?
6?
6.
Okay.
Cody, the co-host don't have to join the groups. So
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, so how might we
Mm,
help family
okay.
members to understand their current adaptations? How might we use a discussion around this, the genogram, all the things we've talked about so far this morning, to help people in the family understand their adaptations? And how might we introduce additional skills, strategies, supports, and coping to take care of self? So those questions are in your chat. We'll see you in 8 minutes.
I'm gonna pause the recording.
10 seconds, everybody will be back.
Oh, yeah, I usually lock it.
Okay, because
All right, I think we're all back. Let's have a little conversation about this. So
Should I lock it? I got the key.
there's a
Okay.
couple of people need to be muted. Awesome. But unmute and talk to us about what did your groups talk about how might we I'll get to the question. How might we help families to understand their current adaptations? And how might we introduce additional skills and strategies for supporting, coping, and taking care of self? Who wants to share?
Do I sound better, y'all?
Yes, much.
Okay.
Beautiful.
I had the pleasure to being in the room with Brian, Jose, and Eric, and they had some really great solutions. One very powerful one that was said was family therapy.
Okay.
I thought that stood out for me personally, because having therapy family therapy would be something great because especially I shared a scenario with them, and especially when everybody is not on the same page. A family member here is this way, a family member is that way, and then the person that's in recovery, they way up yonder, and everybody's kind of all over the place. So having family therapy
Yeah.
can possibly help get everybody on one accord.
Yeah. Having those somebody to help facilitate those conversations. Great. Thank you, Kristen. Others. Have them recognize their existing strengths. Yeah.
We were discussing, we had a great group as well. We were discussing, having, if your facility like allows it or has, the bandwidth for it, having a family group. We do family groups, and it's like partly education, partly support. And I think one of the, I don't know, just one of the barriers to adapting or anything new is just support. It's like if you feel supported. And so just kind of being able to know or like read the room, if you will, like, knowing kind of where the conversation needs to go. Are we dealing, do we have a room full of or partly full of like people with trauma, or can we use a little humor, or things like that. Just knowing your audience and being able to use lived experience, and like someone said, creating a safe space. I think the group settings really help because it's less pressure than one-on-one sometimes, but sometimes people feel the opposite. So again, it's just
Yeah.
like knowing the clients and knowing kind of where they would thrive more. But I definitely think just supporting people through the change and through the learning curve, of learning a new way how to cope or move through something is hard. And so the more they feel supported, the more they feel, inclined to apply the new things to their life.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I have in the chat creating a family treatment wellness plan aside from individual recovery wellness plan. Yep, having a plan for the family. And again, thinking about the dynamics. Our group mentioned being empathetic, helping the participant explore, the clients explore, advocating, being respectful, allowing open communication lines, using strengths-based approach, a focus on what's working well, resilience, loyalty, and love, and use their strengths to support healthier adaptations and skill building. And again, I want to mention this is the conversation we kind of started having when you all were in group. We had it in the main room. It doesn't mean that some of these adaptations can fall into roles and patterns that might be negative, right? Might be reinforcing substance use, those kinds of things. And so it doesn't mean we don't want to face challenges or struggles and only, kind of only be Pollyanna and focus on positive. But it is thinking about the fact that if I am enabling or covering or whatever the words we might have used, for us to talk to families about that and say that that is an adaptation. That is a way that you are coping. That is a way that you are dealing. And so we understand that. We don't take it on as guilt or shame. We take it on as, ooh, that's the way I'm coping. If that's not working for the family system, or that's contributing to conflict or contributing to continued use, maybe I want to adapt a different way, right? So thinking about that, and I'm hoping that the family centered peer recovery coach can maybe have some of those conversations. Yeah, of course you're adapting. This is hard. And so maybe we can find a different way to adapt that helps you to survive, helps you to maintain your well-being. Anyway, so that's just
No, and I would add to that with a question, perhaps asking you to share if you are on this journey of moving away from those roles that we've traditionally used. And I can just say them, roles such as enabler, hero, scapegoat, mascot, lost child. If you're moving away from those roles to framing them as adaptations, and then taking the strengths out and trying to highlight the strengths and also talk about the negatives of that role. How's that going for you? Is anybody on that journey? making sure you're not using those traditional role titles and you're moving to how we're talking about it here as adaptations. How's that going for you? Is that working?
Yeah, I can share. When I started my recovery journey, I realized that I was the hero of my family. And I was also the oldest, and my father got really sick. And so I took everything on. And this was early sobriety when my dad got sick. It was kind of one of the reasons why I got sober. And so it was really nice that I was in all these counseling forums, whether it was 12-step counseling, group counseling, going to church. I was able to identify and have a lot of support and people that were so wonderful that had been through this before me that taught me how to break the cycle. And then my children were like 5 and 7, and now they're 18 and 21, and they don't carry any of that. So it's worked so well for me to identify all of that and really, because I had kids too. And so today I have much different relationships with my family. Some relationships are gone and broken, and some have been completely redefined.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa, for sharing.
Lacey.
Lacey?
Yes, this was what we kind of talked about this in our breakout group too, is I as well am the hero of my family, but I'm also the scapegoat. It's kind of funny how I'm kind of both. But I didn't know that for a really long time. I hadn't I had just been in survival mode, but once I was able to identify that, knowing's half the problem. So once I identified that, I was like, cool, so how do we move past this? And I didn't have someone to teach me. So now I become that resource for others. Especially as a hero, you never prioritize your own personal needs because you want to make sure everyone else's is. You just want them to see how good you're doing. So realizing you do have feelings, you do have emotions, they matter. It's okay to not carry that entire weight on you anymore. That's their responsibility. And sometimes I still have guilt about that because I still want to continue to be the hero. But if I'm not okay, I am going to be of service to anyone? And so I always ask the people I'm working with is what does that look like, for you? What does your me time look like? What does your taking care of you look like? Because it changes for me every day. Sometimes my me time is I need to run away and hide in a corner. And sometimes my me time is let's go out and go to the mall or do something. It adapts, and so does theirs. But yeah, that's just me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lacey.
Thank you,
I want to
Lacey.
read a couple chats and then I'll go to Brian, if that's okay. Logan said recognizing negative coping mechanisms and redirecting, being able to identify and open to change is key. Becoming aware of what helped us survive as a family might be the very behaviors that are also keeping us from getting healthier. Sometimes survival skills need to be tamed in order to invite other perspectives in. I'll applaud that. Definitely moved away from being the hero. I'm trying to escape the family scapegoat role. Okay, Brian, go ahead. Thank you for sharing.
I just basically have a question. Thank you, guys. I'm wondering what setting are we referring to? Are we referring to a group family setting, or are we referring to individual therapy or individual coaching, I should say? Because that will determine how I respond to the questions.
So I think, Brian, either or all of any setting, we haven't specified that using these terms, these labels we traditionally helped us understand different roles. I think we were talking about with an individual or in a family meeting, in a family discussion, both. I think we hadn't really identified it.
But I also want to add, I think part of this module too is understanding not just working with individual, how you work with a family too. I mean, it may be individuals within a family, but again, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, and so thank you for clarifying. And so for me, working with family unit systems, education definitely, and validation is definitely important in for the families working together as a unit. Individually, we work on autonomy, right, and having a voice and validation in that setting. Then we bring them together, and hopefully in a peaceful manner, right? It's been my experience, hadn't always been peaceful, but that those two things come to mind for me: education and validation. Education of the direction we're trying to go, and then the validation of each person's autonomy in the family, especially the IP. So
Yeah.
thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah. Education validation. I think that's where we're going to is how do you understand your role, your dynamics, whatever that may be, and however it might change in different situations. And then also validation of I don't think it's like normalizing, but again, taking the shame and guilt out of that, to really say this is an adaptation. For me, the reason why we shifted to adaptation is really this is how you are surviving this. This is how you are negotiating this. And to give people a little grace, I think is the place where people can then heal, can change and move forward instead of staying stuck in guilt and shame.
And I would agree. And some of these labels, these traditional labels, are more shame-inducing than others, particularly enabler. Enabler is a label that can very much cause people to go in a shame spiral, and the only thing we get with shame is going underground and going under the radar. So while the behaviors that go along with that label, it's incredibly important to educate our families about that and increase awareness so that people, as people noted here, can grow from that. What we're suggesting here in a family-centered approach is ensuring that we're not sharing blame or shame anywhere. Compassionate awareness, Melissa, thank you. And that the family, that we're careful about ensuring that family members are not the enemy in any way. That is another piece of the traditional role where we're working with an individual, where family members, through their lens and our bias, shows up that family is the problem. And while the genogram may show all sorts of things, of course, we just have to be really cognizant and curious about how to use language that doesn't cause a family member to go into another shame spiral, which just doesn't promote healing or recovery or any form of family conversations that can lead to healing.
And Karen, I think it's important that, this really isn't designed necessarily that we speak to families and label them. I mean, really it is about the behaviors, and when working with families, it's very important not to use labels and tell everybody, well, you're this and you're this. But as we understand family dynamics, this is about understand family dynamics. And then if you are able to understand family dynamics, then how you work with families can be more effective. So it isn't something that you sit down with a family and say, oh, let's talk about everybody's roles, and you're this and you're this and you're this. We don't want to shame, we don't want to blame, but we want to recognize how the family functions as a system so that we can more effectively work with them.
Thanks, Karen.
I hope this helps.
Absolutely.
Fred.
Thank you.
Fred?
Yeah, to add some words to what we're talking about, and determining what actions families take. Obviously, there's got to be some mutual respect and mutual decision making on boundaries. But to be very careful again about that word, and don't be an enabler. Well, some people think that they're enabling just by staying connected. And yet the exact opposite is to stay connected, because that's the most important. Guard your boundaries, that's fine, but stay connected, don't isolate, because that will just perpetuate the problem.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think to the question in the chat that says, is there a better term than enabler? in some ways we took these slides and used those labels and really just described them. So if you look at 22, takes on the emotions of others, attempts to create stability, a person who has difficulty setting boundaries, prioritizes the needs over self. So those would be the words that I might use, the ones on 22, a couple slides back. I don't know if we can share those. You know, instead of enabler. And then, you know, so really these slides, we did take the traditional roles and just use different words. So this is the hero, you know, that kind of thing. So if you look at them, is that one? Yeah. They are kind of the same things. Just using words to describe behaviors versus the label. So this one is, you know, again, is the enabler. Click to the next one is more of the one that's around the hero. Moving to the next one, I think this is the mascot. And the next one down is maybe be lost child. I don't know if we have anything around scapegoat, but anyways, that's what we tried to do, is let's really look at those traditional labels and sort of just adapt them into describing behaviors versus whatever. So
Yeah, I mean, and Melissa, here, thank you, Sarah, and for everyone. I like person who has difficulty setting boundaries. So talking about the behavior, just putting the behavior into the discussion can also be helpful.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. We are definitely at break time. It's been almost an hour and a half, which is a long time. So we'll take a 10-minute break and we will come back in my time and Eastern Standard Time is 12:34. We'll come back at 35 after the hour. So please turn your cameras off and all of that. Take a break. Thank you. In this case, oh, thanks, Cody. In this case, for a peer recovery, family center peer recovery coach to have awareness and knowledge about that, to be able to be curious about what that might be and perhaps start to have a conversation, certainly with the team that you're working with also, but with the family to explore what that might be about is just important to be curious about what's going on with the kids. What do you see that may be an indication of lack of trust, lack of attunement, lack of a positive attachment?
I also think illness plays a role. It could be like mental health or physical illnesses, cancer, that kind of thing, for sure.
Thank you, Terry.
Can
That
you
brings
read the chat to you too? Sorry.
Oh, there's lots in the chat. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sarah. Yes, illness. Also, you know, we do have organizations in our community. I'm thinking of our organization in Rhode Island, PSNRI, that works a lot with families and child welfare. And certainly these kinds of things show up in those dynamics all the time. So incarceration, being separated from a family due to child welfare placement, all of these things get in the way of certainly a positive attachment. Let me see, what have I missed here? Like, let me see, is that where it starts? Phone, electronics.
It starts with Tracy Thompson, generational trauma.
Yep, thank you.
Sorry.
And then illness, cancer, COPD, that's very similar to what you shared, Terry. Extreme poverty, you know, phones, electronics, we have to be careful. The screen time and the distractions that brings has definitely impacted our engagement with our children in general. I'm just speaking to what I witness in my own family, and how if we see that showing up in as a family center peer recovery coach and the families we're supporting, that's something perhaps to bring into the conversation. Lack of education, understanding how the early years of child's development is very important. Exactly, Maria. So for us to be able to share that and provide awareness and knowledge and skills about that is a very important piece of the puzzle. Financial struggles, very large families. Yes, challenges from grandparents, a lack of consistency around rules, around structure from different outside adults in the family. Simply not being present emotionally or physically, for sure, will impact childhood attachment. disconnected teachers in school, lack of validation for the child's emotions. Cody, thank you. And validation, gaslighting around child's experience at school, at extracurriculars with other families, etc. So things like, oh, you'll get over it, or that's not a big deal. You don't have to worry about that. You shouldn't be so don't be so sensitive, those kinds of things. Being a single parent, not having enough time to spend with the children due to having to work 2 jobs. Lots and lots of great responses. All of these things get in the way of positive attachment. Thank you so much for sharing.
I just want to throw one more thing in there too, that I want to underscore the importance of helping families to understand the early years and development. I do a lot of work in early childhood, and I think that the common prevailing belief out there is still, oh, they're young, they won't remember it. And so that children experience toxic stress in utero all the way up, that just having people have that awareness, because the experiences that I've seen people do, things that have happened in front of young children, and then people saying, what, they're not going to remember it. They thank goodness, kids are resilient, that kind of thing. So just having people really have that science is new, and
Yes.
it's not in the common understanding, I guess. So.
Thanks, Sarah. So here, what does secure attachment do for us? All these things. Provides the brain with sensory stimulation to help the brain grow, as that video showed, to, when we're doing the pruning, ensuring that the positive, helpful neural pathways are developing and the other ones are falling off, are being pruned. Allows the child to be soothed when he is in distress. Also leads to being able to self-soothe in positive, healthy ways. Gives a child a sense of belonging, which is so incredibly important. Reduces stress hormone released in the child. Absolutely. Teaches the child that the world is a safe place to explore. So there we've got that worldview. This is a safe world. I'm okay here. I'm accepted. I belong, and I can start to leave the really important umbrella of my family as I grow and start to take risks and to explore in a healthy way. Helps a child grow up to have secure relationships. So we have a scenario discussion. This is in your key learning summary. So there's 2 slides here, and then there's just a few questions related to attachment. We'll come back to Angela and her. Angela's the daughter and the mother is Wendy. So we'll come back to Angela and her mother, Wendy, later tomorrow. When Angela is a 29-year-old living with her mother, she dropped out of school at age 16, witnessed domestic violence between mom and dad, was physically and sexually abused by boyfriend, began using drugs, was arrested and is currently incarcerated, was sexually abused by father for 5 years. This is Angela's daughter, Wendy, a 13-year-old living with her grandmother. So let's get this straight. Let's make sure I got this straight. Angela is the mom, and she's also living with her mother. Angela's daughter is Wendy, who's living with her mother and the grandmother, and Angela's mother. Wendy witnessed a drive-by shooting resulting in death of a cousin, witnessed domestic violence between mother and mother's boyfriend, was bullied at school for being different, placed in state custody and resided in foster care for 9 months in 3 foster homes, and was sexually abused and trafficked by mother's boyfriend for the last 2 years. Very complex histories for both Angela and her daughter, Wendy. A lot of complex needs going on here, which, would not all be the responsibility or the role of the peer recovery coach, but to be aware of what's going on in the family, and perhaps to understand these high-level questions. What, if anything, might have disrupted their relationship between Angela and Wendy? How might it impact the relationship with their own children? And how might healthy attachment help them to recover and to, develop relationships with their own family? I think I'm just going to leave this in the big group right now. So it is in your key learning summary, but here are questions. What, if anything, might have disrupted the relationship between Angela and Wendy? How might it impact the relationship with their own children and future generations? And how might healthy attachment help them? Any ideas? If you need me to share the slides again, I can do that as you think through these questions. Here's Angela, who's living with both her mother and her daughter, Wendy. All of these things that have happened to her. And, oh, sorry. And here's Wendy, the 13-year-old who's living with her mother, Angela, and her grandmother. Violence in the home and neighborhood, not being protected from sexual abuse, clearly, thank you, impacts a person's worldview, a person's idea of safety,
Yes.
trust. Go ahead. What? Yes, thank you.
Oh, that's just it. Yeah. And then being taken away from your family for 9 months.
Yeah.
In 3 different foster homes, not just one. So having multiple placements, it makes it difficult. I mean, it's good that they took her and she was safer away from that guy who was trafficking her, I guess, but 3 different homes is not safe. I mean, for her, you know, she didn't even get to catch her breath probably.
Absolutely, Terry. And for those of us that have worked in foster care, we know that if that continues, the disruption, even 3 is more, will definitely lead to this. It's basically kids just come to a place where they, around 3 months, they expect to disrupt. This foster home's over now. It's got to be over. If some adult doesn't tell me it's over, I'm going to disrupt it myself, so it's over, because I can't trust that this is a good place for me to be. Anyone else?
Could you show those questions again, please?
Yes, I can. Thank you for asking. So, Jerry said the mom is incarcerated and we don't know that the homes are safe. Jenna, drug use from mom, the abuse from the boyfriend, lack of trust, being placed out of the home because of the abuse. Whitney, violence and substance use, being in state custody, foster care, not being protected. Maria, shared trauma of sexual abuse, absence of mother, and mistrust of mother. Yeah, all of those things.
Hey, Karen, I can clarify.
Yep.
I was just saying that we don't know that the foster homes are safe, even if more safe, because we do know that despite our best efforts, many foster families can have like different rules for birth children and foster children, that they can be very harsh and shaming, introduce all kinds of well-intentioned behaviors that just increase the harm. So yes, it's better not to be trafficked, but you could be very much bullied and shamed and othered in a foster home, especially 3 in a row.
Yes, thank you, Jerry, for clarifying that. Foster care is very complicated. And speaking from someone who worked in it for 19 years, I've never experienced it myself. So very humbled by not having experienced it, but watching it, observing it, we know that it's risky. Not because foster parents are bad, because my God, they're amazing people most of the time, but it's just really risky to take kids away from their families often. So it's a good, if Wendy doesn't get the help she needs, she will continue the cycle. Logan, it's a good example of generational trauma. Thank you. If this trauma is not addressed, then it will trickle down to the children, generational trauma. Unhealed or even unrecognized generational trauma that is being transferred to the youth in multiple facets. Melissa, healthy attachment would create an environment where Wendy can heal and process traumas. Thank you all. I mean, perhaps multiple school placements consistent with foster care placements. Yes. Thank you, Karen Yost. Often when most of the time when kids get removed from a foster home, they can't preserve the school placement that they had. So they change again, which is just contributes to the whole challenge. Getting help will help reduce it being passed down to our children. Thank you, Crystal. Okay, You all seem to very much understand these dynamics, and we share it just to remind us all that, you know, as a family-centered peer recovery coach, we're going to want to be aware of these things as we go into the homes. So I believe I pass it to Sarah here, and want to move on to, you know, what can we do? How can we help families create healthy attachment and build resilience?
Great. So yeah, so thinking about that, just really what can we do? Some of the things are things that people are doing already naturally, really underscoring that for people, that it doesn't take um, a big intervention. It can be some things that are small. So let's click to the next one, thinking about enriching environments. Oops. Did we switch?
No, there we
There
go.
it is.
Sorry.
Really just making the physical environment safe, thinking about what, you know, just when we all think about like quote unquote, like baby proofing your house, how do we create an environment for a younger child that's safe, but also for older children where I can have physical safety, there's not threat to my physical body, developing developmentally appropriate toys, games, those kinds of things, interacting in those things, not just always, you know, again, like we talked about the screen time, it's really tempting to, you know, put young kids on an iPad or whatever, or put a video on, or those kinds of things, put them on YouTube, that kind of thing. So really having toys and games that are interactive, having quality early childhood education experiences, so having places where they can engage in early childhood programs, Head Start programs, early Head Start programs when necessary, preschools, really having that opportunity to have multiple caregivers that might be able to meet the needs for attunement that child has, even if the parents or caregivers' capacity is somewhat diminished due to other stressors in their lives. Linkages to early development networks for assistance, helping parents to be as healthy and safe as they can be. Thank you, Karen. Co-regulation. So we talked a little bit about regulation. We talked a lot about pattern, rhythmic, repetitive, lower brain. In early childhood, this is the time when that lower parts of the brain are developing. And so there's things that we perhaps do naturally with young children. But if that wasn't my experience, when I was talk about, you know, all the stuff in the comments about intergenerational trauma, if that wasn't my experience, I might not have that innate in me, you know? So thinking about teaching people about the importance of rocking, the importance of making eye contact with your child, singing to the child, attuning, you know, during feeding times. It's so easy to, you know, prop the bottle up, or you know, be on the computer yourself while you're bottle feeding or nursing a child or feeding them. But like, you know, just all those things, like creating airplanes, you know, with the spoon, feeding together, talking together, really to underscore to families how important those things are. Putting the phone down, learning to take turns, reading books together. These are all just really simple ways to co-regulate and attune, and to help families understand the way in which that's creating connections in the brain, and pairing those regulation connections with relationship. So giving the brain the information that not only can I regulate and calm down, but basically that people make it better, relationship makes it better, connection makes it better. So feeding a child's one thing, but feeding a child while holding and singing to them creates all kinds of wonderful things in the brain. So we have this simple concept that a lot of early childhood folks know about, but you can use this video with people. It's from the Center of the Developing Child at Harvard University. Again, we've drawn from them for a lot of resources. Go to their website if you're, you know, working with families with young children. They have a lot of free resources. So this is called Serve and Return, and this is really just teaching about how to do serve and return with young children. So Karen, go ahead and play the video.
Did you know that you can help build a child's brain?
Those are bananas.
Everyday interactions can have a big impact on developing brains throughout childhood, starting even before babies can talk.
Scientists Scientists call this serve and return. Like a game of tennis or ping pong, a child serves by showing an interest in something, and the adult responds in a supportive way.
Finding moments throughout the day to do it is easy and fun, and you'll be building strong brains. You can use 5 steps to practice serve and return with any child. Step 1, share the focus.
When a child is interested or curious, you can see it.
What's this? It's a stroller.
Watch this child look at something in a book, right there. Pointing shows interest.
Cow.
So does making a sound, like this child. And mom is paying close attention.
See baby moving those little arms and legs and focusing on the ball? That's a serve.
The key is paying attention to what the child is noticing.
Oh, you like those guys too?
Look at Grandpa sharing the focus.
By noticing serves, you will help build curiosity, and you'll strengthen your relationship.
Step 2, support and encourage.
You can return a child's serve by saying a word of encouragement.
That's right. Very good.
Watch Grandpa return this serve by saying thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Even a facial expression can encourage a child.
Orange.
Or emotion, like this mom dancing.
Time.
You can also pick up the object that the child is pointing to and bring it closer.
We need help to sit her down.
Things like helping and playing with the child let them know that their thoughts and feelings are heard and understood. Step 3, name it.
Yeah, the puppy. See the windows, the house.
When you return a child's serve by naming what they are seeing, doing, or feeling, you make important language connections in their brain.
He's got bumps all over him, huh?
This brain building happens even before a child can talk or understand your words.
You can name anything, a person, a thing, an action, a feeling, or a combination.
Clean up, everybody do your shit.
When you name what a child is focused on, you help build understanding of the world around us and what to expect from it.
The baby's sitting. Ooh, the baby's sitting in the back seat of the car.
You like those? Those are raisins. You have raisins all the time.
Naming also gives a child words to use later and shows that words are important to you.
Step 4, take turns back and forth.
Taking turns helps children learn self-control and how to get along with others.
Waiting is crucial. When you return a serve, give the child a chance to respond.
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Note that the caregiver waits here for the next serve.
See this toddler navigating a new adventure? Grandpa is waiting patiently, returning serves by asking questions and then waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah.
You want to cover it?
Yeah.
Are you cold?
Yeah.
Let me put this over your lap like this, okay? There. Do you like that?
Yeah.
Oh.
By waiting, you give the child time to develop ideas and build confidence and independence.
Step 5, practice endings and beginnings. Children signal when they're done or ready to move on to a new activity.
Watch how this child shows it's time to start something new. Letting go of a toy signals an ending. Then picking up a new toy signals the next beginning.
Want to play with the giraffe?
Sharing the focus is important in this step.
Ooh, the big eagle.
Because this mom is sharing the focus, she notices when her child is ready to end one activity and begin something new.
X, Y, and Z.
When you can find these moments for a child to take the lead,
Let me try this one.
you support the child in exploring their world
Would you like to play with something else?
and make more serve and return interactions possible.
Sit there.
Serve and return interaction is critical for a child's developing brain. And the best news is that you can do it anytime, anywhere, without any need for toys or technology.
Look for small opportunities throughout the day, like while you're making a snack or while you're grocery shopping. What matters most is that you're doing each of these 5 steps. Notice the serve and share the child's focus of attention. Return the serve by supporting and encouraging. Name it, take turns going back and forth, and practice endings and beginnings.
Serve and return interactions make everyday moments fun and become second nature with practice. Try practicing with a child today.
Oops. Okay. So any thoughts about that? Any ways that we can use, can increase serve and return? Really it's kind of a simple strategy, but to really help parents who sense of efficacy around their parenting by just increasing this. Thoughts about that? I saw Kyle, you've seen this video. Would love to use it with Native communities. Call you the baby whisperer, learning to do it all the time. I saw people putting their cat in to make it, to distract them and answer all the little questions. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, right? Educate them and make them aware of serve and return. Can we see the question again? How can we support caregivers to increase serve and return interactions? And again, not assuming that people already know this. I think one of the experiences, I think Karen, you were at our old organization when this happened, when we were working with youth aging out of foster care. So people who hadn't had who'd had kind of a bumpy journey in their own life. And they were coming to our organization for things like job applications and housing and things like that. But many of them were in their early 20s, bringing young children. And part of what we recognized is while the rest of the staff was all, running to their babies, cooing, that kind of thing, the parents sometimes didn't have this concept of serve and return. And so we really realized that part of the importance was to teach them to notice their little child, their baby's cues, and to really celebrate those. Ooh, she's reaching out to you. Ooh, she's, that kind of thing. So peekaboo, yep, can do it anywhere. Did it without being aware of it. Yep, most of us do, but being intentional. And I think for me, it's also given me permission to do serve and return in public. So every baby I see, every child I see in the grocery store, I'm going to, if they look at me, I'm going to return that serve, right? In the airplane when they're peeking over the top of the chair, whatever. Any other thoughts about this? Sorry, I talked the whole time.
There's a TED Talk on peekaboo done by an 8-year-old girl. You can find it very easily and show it to your families. It's just amazing how she explains why peekaboo matters.
Yeah. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, the little pigs. Yeah, just really helping them to underscore that and know, and having families understand that matters, right? That when we're stressed, this matters. So, okay, I think we can move on. Make up a song for a task. Yes. Oh my gosh, I remember that. That takes me back. I'm going to cry. My husband used to do this with our kids. They love it. They would say, "Daddy, sing what I'm doing." And so then he would just sing a song about Aaron's going over to the da-da-da. And so they would do weird things just so that their dad would have to sing about it. So let's roll it together. Yeah, great. And I like that, not to make assumptions about what parents know and not know, and for them to not underestimate the power of their words. So moving on a little bit to adolescence, we're going to go about 3 more slides and then we're going to take a quick 5-minute stretch break. We know we're hitting that point again, but looking for, adolescent development, understanding adolescent development. As far as the brain science goes, adolescence is really another time of pruning. So it's a really important time for thinking about what inputs are happening for a child's brain. And we can look at, the warning signs for them. for substance use disorder, physical clues, sudden changes, emotional changes, sustained, it's not just a bad, moody day, but when that happens over time, changes in school attendance and grades, losses of money or instances of unaccountable money coming into them, dramatic changes in who they hang out with and their friends, changes in their mood or personality, having things missing, drugs missing from the cabinet, or deterioration in their appearance. So I think we also, when we think about intergenerational, we need to also be thinking about our adolescents and coaching them. Engaging our adolescents can sometimes be hard. Next slide. And I want you to just take a moment and think back about when you were a teenager. What did you need when you were overwhelmed, when you were in trouble, when you were afraid? What did you want from the adults in your life? And what was not helpful? Any thoughts about that? I think about a lot of the people that I know that have, have their own lived experience, including myself, with trauma as a teen, and thinking about, how obvious it was that something was going on with me and that nobody really asked the question, right? Nobody made the space for it. Yeah, getting in trouble, getting grounded, not helpful. I need someone to listen and not judge. Comfort me, for my mom just to listen to me. Molly says they went for a run. I needed help and not to feel alone. Parent coming from fear, not control. From fear or control, not love. Yep, that's not helpful. I needed someone who could relate to what I was going through. I wanted my mom to pay attention to me, being the only child. It wasn't helpful that everyone was always busy and leaving the house. Parents to ask and listen without judgment. Anthony, go ahead.
I think, and this still kind of plays today, but as a child, it was always difficult to ask for what I needed because I just didn't want to, be a barrier and to be, I guess, like needy. If I wanted to, get help with homework or even in school, like asking to use, the bathroom or, if I was hungry, afraid to ask for, another plate. And so I think that was always difficult. And I think now, like, even still, like, it could be difficult for me to ask for help because I'm like, I don't want to bother someone with my needs. Let me just ignore that. And I think also too, like, it was very difficult for me to express like emotions, to be able to have feelings or to cry or to just kind of speak on what was really happening. And for me now, that's just so important that I, one, can do that for myself, but also do that with others to allow them to just be open and honest with just, again, no judgment, just like true, deep compassion and understanding. Because it takes a lot of courage to, really speak up and be vulnerable.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Anthony. A couple more in the chat too, to know that they love me unconditionally no matter what I did. It was not helpful when I felt like I could not tell my mom what was going on because I was scared of consequences. So again, a lot of awesome answers coming in, and Brian, I'll get to you in just a second. This might be a question you want to ask your families to think about, put themselves in the position of their own teens when they were teenagers. What did they not need? What did they want? To communicate without yelling. I didn't learn how to communicate or express my emotions in a constructive way till I got sober at 35. Thank you. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with what everyone said, and I think Anthony and I must have grown up in the same household. I guess for me, looking back and trying to be trauma informed, it's just creating that safe space. I didn't feel like I had a safe space to even express my thoughts or feelings, right? And being raised with a very domineering mom, it was her way or the highway, and so really didn't have an opinion or voice, which looking back now makes me very conflict avoidant now, and people pleasing.
Yeah.
People pleasing, and maybe even some imposter syndrome because of that. And I just think that validation without judgment goes a long way, especially for young men. You know, it's okay to make a mistake. Let's learn from it and move on. You know, and so I think that can help with engaging adolescents.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
That's so true. Jermaine Russell says in the chat, that's so true, Brian. Yeah. Maria says, I didn't have safe space with either my biological parents, and I could not go to either one of them. Right. So thinking about what you would have wanted, how you might have wanted, and again, we have to have accountability and all those kinds of things. But I always think about with my son, I always tell him, both of them, if you're ever in trouble and you're somewhere and you need me to come get you, I will come for you. And I promise to not even talk to you about it till the next day. So how to be in a place where I'm not going to lecture you, I'm not going to whatever. I will help you. I will support you. Yeah. I'm thinking about, again, what I needed. So we're coming up on a break. I thank you for all your wonderful, vulnerable sharing. It's really meaningful to me. It doesn't go unnoticed. And just finally, you can go to this resource as well, Support for Adolescents when a parent or someone in their life is experiencing substance use disorder. There's this resource from the National Association for Children of Addiction, the 7 C's. So I didn't cause it. I can't control it. I can't cure it. I can help take care of myself by communicating my needs, my feelings, making healthy choices, and celebrating me. So thinking about how we might, and there's a whole kind of toolkit here, but this is just one of the ways that we might support our adolescents who are in a family, or even, middle school age kids, kind of thinking about how they might be supported. So resources there. We're about to move on to the foundations of peer recovery. We only have only about a half hour left, but let's take another 5-minute stretch break. Go ahead, do whatever you need to do. Take a bio break, get a glass of water, take a stretch, even just stand up in your seat to get us another little break. If you need a longer break, it's okay, but we'll start again in 5 minutes. And so let me look at
take us through the last pieces of our morning together here, our first 3 hours. And I'm just looking to find the share button. Okay. So we get in this section, getting into definitions briefly, and then if we have time this morning, we may not, getting into some very high foundational concepts for what the family-centered peer recovery coach needs to have. And tomorrow we'll get into skills and strategies, get very specific about that. So definition, it's in your key learning summary. Family-centered peer recovery coaching, certainly it's a family-centered approach, and it's a comprehensive approach, including clinical treatment and related support services that meets the needs of each family member. It really moves away from only serving the needs of the individual requesting care. So it expands the whole approach to everyone who is defined as being in that family. It breaks down the behaviors and patterns often handed down by family members and looks at how family dynamics play a role in substance use disorder and recovery. Some of the objectives of this model are ensuring that parents are supported in their caregiving and parenting roles. So always keeping an eye on the needs of the parents. Children in the dynamic receive the necessary services and support so they can remain with their parents during the treatment and recovery process. The focus is on both recovery for the individual who's identified with SUD and the needs of the children and other identified family members. And the family creates an environment that supports recovery and a healthy family ecosystem. Here are some of the coaches' roles, the family-centered peer recovery coach roles. I'd love to hear, as I go through those, I'd love to hear, what we're missing here, what we need to add. Hold a safe and supportive space by being fully present without judgment, offering emotional support, sharing knowledge and experience, teaching life skills. Many of these are the same roles that we have when we're not working with the family, when we're working with the individual, but we're expanding it to the family. Obviously, actively listening, being a champion for success, empowering folks to achieve and move forward with their progress for the family and the individual recovery, being a role model, being a guide, sorting out how to build trust and repair some of the trust that's been broken, being a cheerleader, again, back to being a champion, same thing, maybe, celebrating any positive change, baby steps or otherwise. Building family-driven goals, so the goals are moving beyond just the individual, but moving to the family. Planning for safety, providing practical assistance, and as always in our peer role, we're connecting family with resources, opportunities, and communities of support. What else would you add here that might be missing? And feel free to put in the chat or come off mute. Any others that we're missing? Validating feelings. Thank you, Willow. Making sure we're not gaslighting in any way, or we're not dismissing anything, but we're offering emotional support and we're validating feelings. We're advocating. I don't know if the word advocate's on here. So thank you for that. Thank you, Jordan. Being unbiased and non-judgmental, Whitney. So other really important pieces, that first bullet point about holding a safe and supportive space by feeling fully present without judgment is one of the, pieces that can be complicated, because when you're supporting a whole family, you may find yourself having biases towards one family member or another, or identifying in your head what might be going on that is behaviors from an individual family member that might be detrimental to the overall family recovery. So doing that in a way that is non-judgmental and non-biased and as neutral as possible. That's really important, being unbiased and non-judgmental.
I just thought about something real quick.
Okay. Yes.
How do we, and this is kind of a rhetorical, how do we deal with transference and projection, especially when you're dealing with your own trauma?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Brian. Do you want to speak just a little bit to transference, or anybody want to define that? Sarah, you may speak better to it than me, transference.
Sure. I think, I think there's the clinical definition or whatever, but I think it really is in these situations, it's kind of identifying your story, seeing your story in the person in the way in which you might assume their experience is the same as yours. Am I getting that right, Brian?
I believe that, yeah, that's pretty close. My thought process in that is, if I am working with the family and then there is some transference because of my own trauma, maybe it's molestation or it's bullying, and then this is what's being addressed in the family, how do I prevent myself from becoming biased towards another family member?
So, really good question. The top answer that comes to my mind is focusing on that in supervision with your supervisor, and hopefully that relationship allows for that kind of reflection, because being able to talk that through with either a supervisor or a fellow peer is the way you can unravel that and sort out, what you're experiencing, have someone else listen to you and say it back to you, etc. And then sort out how you protect yourselves, or how you minimize that transference in the next interaction.
I think it's also thinking, good supervision, finding a supervisor or another person that you uh, you find connection with. I like this quote: if you don't have a supervisor you feel safe with, find another job. Is the best advice he's ever been given. They've ever been given. But I think it's also when you have a really strong reaction to something, being curious about that.
Yeah.
So if you have a really big, you get in your car and you start crying, you get in your car and you are angry 2 days later, reflecting on, what is this? What's going on with me? And Karen, you had your hand up. You want to share?
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking is that this would not be unusual, when peer recovery coaches experience this, it's not an infrequent problem. And Karen said it, really well. That's what supervision is for. And finding a safe place where you can explore that. The fact that you might recognize it is huge. And so then using your own support network, and supervisors should be supports. That's what supervision is, really, to be able to explore that, and help you understand it, and then help you strategize ways to deal with it. And I agree. If you don't have a good supervisor, it's huge. It's a huge problem. But yeah, Karen pretty much said, this isn't unusual a lot of times for individuals in helping professions because we all bring our experience into it. But the key is being able to recognize that something isn't right, and then having, a supervisor or support network where you can explore that and strategize around it.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Brian. Really important question. So just in the chat here, we have people agreeing with the supervisor is really important, being self-aware. Fred is noting ability to redirect and diffuse situations. Incredibly important. And then my supervisor is awesome. That's really good news. Moving on here, what the family-centered peer recovery coach needs to know. Basic categories of areas of understanding. Understanding human growth and development at different stages, to be able to recognize the impact on children and identify needs. And we've introduced some of that in this training, knowing that this training isn't going to cover all of that. There isn't time, but those may be additional trainings that you'd want to join and attend. How we regulate emotions, that's critically important. We'll focus on that again tomorrow. Yes, effective communication skills, very important. How to negotiate and provide resolution around conflict. So teaching conflict resolution skills, understanding of family risk and protective factors, what's going on with the family that in which they have strong protective factors, but in which they are at risk, and knowledge of community resources and how to assess them, and certainly making sure that you're referring as possible. Thank you, Karen. The next learning and sharing hour for this community, for the Family Centered Peer Recovery Coaches, 10 communities, will be reflective supervision. Really important. Please make sure to go to that. We also do have the last module that it will be coming out is in this training curriculum is supervision of peer recovery coaches. So that very specific information for supervisors who work with this workforce. We've still got just about 15 minutes under that. There's 3 concepts that we wanted to share that showed up in our work groups, etc., that are foundational for the family-centered peer recovery coach. First one is healthy boundaries. Sarah?
Yeah, so I'll just get through this. I don't know how far we'll get, but we'll just go as far as we can go. So professional boundaries for family-centered peer recovery coaches. I think it really speaks to the discussion and what Brian was talking about, really kind of knowing your skill level, knowing when to seek supervision, when to seek assistance. And again, that because this role position, this concept is new, it takes some skill and some negotiation, some talking about, some thinking about openly, being okay, because as a peer recovery coach, I think it took a long time for the field to sort of find their footing around this, and now that we're having the family dynamics, it complicates things even more. So it's more likely that these things are going to come up. Influencing the intervention based on your beliefs and experience, reliving your trauma can be part of that, sharing too much of your own experience and becoming kind of enmeshed in the family unit. So really not sort of finding your own boundary, your own where you end and sort of the family begins. Being sure that you have balance in your life, and that again you can separate your story from the families and the people that you're supporting, story and experience. Click. So why do we need professional boundaries? We need to set clear roles, limits, expectations. We can experience trust through that, so that we are responding the same way to the family members and for the entire family through consistency, so that they know that we're predictable, and we'll have a similar response and be able to hold that boundary, create safety. It helps protect us, helps provide our own burnout, so that we're not living in our own past trauma all of the time, in the work that we do. Recognizes power imbalances. There is a difference between, your role and the family. And so creating that, modeling healthy behavior, showing, a lot of us didn't get taught how to hold professional and personal boundaries, especially, but professional boundaries is kind of a skill we have to learn. Reduces the confusion in relationship, right? Are we friends? Are we colleagues? So really thinking about that. Remain removed from the drama. That's what Fred says. Thank you. So I'd love to, the next slide we have is really around boundary red flags, but given this conversation, we have some here, but I would love to send you to just a 5-minute breakout for you to come back and say, what are the red flags for you? What are the ways that you know that this work is getting to you, that you are crossing a boundary? So why don't we do a 5-minute breakout, groups of 6, I think. Is that good? Or do you want smaller?
No, 6 is great.
6 is good. And just maybe we'll end on this.
Yes.
For you to come back and share a little bit on what are the red flags for you? How do you know that it's getting to you, or that there's a boundary being crossed, or that you are crossing a boundary? So take 5 minutes to talk about that. One last time for you to connect. All right. So will a couple people share? We were talking about it in the large room when y'all were in breakout sessions, just trying to think about, how do I recognize this in myself when I'm crossing a boundary? How do I even know to bring this to my supervisor? I think one of the things we talked about is normalizing this, that this is something that happens for peer recovery coaches, but it happens for everybody who's in helping professions. There are times when you cross a boundary, you over-identify, you transference, as the words of whatever. It is part of this work, as that you might see yourself in the family. So anyways, evaluations in the piece, but who will share? What are the red flags for yourself when you know perhaps something's up here with me?
Like for me, it would be wanting the recovery than what they want the recovery. And then I think we were talking about rides. Like for us, we're allowed to give rides for people that need to go for doctor's appointments or whatever IDs, whatever appointments they have to, but we have to be notified ahead of time. Like we have to have that discussion. And sometimes they just come in and say, "Hey, you can give me a ride because so and so said," and I'm just like, "Yeah, no, I can't do it at this time because I'm on schedule."
Yeah. So just like calling you up like a friend and saying, "Hey, give me a ride," right? Kaya?
Okay, very quickly, I would like to share too, a lot of the times it's just self-reflection, me thinking like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. And even from time to time, people will tell me too, especially family. But I have to be mindful in the sense that I'm learning as I'm going too. I can't be so hard on myself. And this is what I shared with our colleagues too during the breakout is, I'm a person who identifies in long-term recovery. So, we're not perfect. We're all human when it comes down to it. But again, noticing, those things that, bring up those red flags and not trying to make those mistakes again and continuing to lead by example.
And being okay if you do make a mistake occasionally, right? When you take it home with you or care more than they do, yep, that can be a sign. Thank you, Kyle. For me, if I'm with a family and I find myself really only looking at one person, then I need to check like that. If I find myself really focusing on the value of what one contributor is doing and I'm kind of ignoring or blowing off the contributions of others, if you're in a family system, for me, that's a thing like, ooh, I'm over identifying with that one person, right?
That's
Okay.
something our group said too, like showing favoritism to one client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And giving ourselves grace and just exploring that. And again, hopefully we have a good supervisor or a good team to be able to explore that, to know that this is a thing that happens. So it doesn't mean you're not good at your job, you don't know what you're doing, you're not fit for the role. It means you need to be honest about that, bring that to light, and address it, right? So we can talk more about it next session, tomorrow. We are asking you to fill out the evaluation for today, which is in the chat.
And
We'll stay on if anybody needs to chat a little bit more or just has something they want to say and get off their chest. It
Thank
has
you.
been an awesome day. Thank you so much for all your contributions. Karen, go ahead.
I just say the QR code will also get you there with your phone. And yes, I would just echo Sarah. Thank you for all your engagement. Just thank you for the conversations and all that you gave today. We learned a lot as well. Hopefully you learned some things, a few things, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow, same time.